PTF and JK back with you. As you probably know by now, we're going to be back-to-back at Del Mar for the 2024 and 2025 Breeders' Cups. In honor of that fact, we thought we would do a ranking of all the back-to-back Breeders' Cup winners. You could say there's 26 of them. The first three, though, we're not really going to deal with because they weren't in consecutive years. Those were Stephanie's Kitten, Ouija Board, and DeHaas. So don't try to give us a gotcha when you don't hear those. We're going to do our rankings starting with number 23. Big props, by the way, to In the Money Media's own Eric DeCoster for helping us put this list together. Does such a great job for us at inthemoneypodcast.com and over at In the Money Podcast Plus service as well. Number 23, Stormy Liberal, JK. This one won the 2017 and 2018 Turf Sprint. What do you remember about this guy?
I remember the prices, right? And it was back-to-back winners for Peter Miller, who actually went on to win a third one as well. This horse was 30-1 and 7-1. You don't see that too often on this list.
That's right. Let's keep going. Another sprinter, but we'll move to the dirt side. One of the classic Breeders' Cup races is the Sprint in 2017 and 2018. This one won the Breeders' Cup Sprint. That's Roy H. Two different jocks, Kent DeSormo and Paco Lopez. What do you remember about Roy H. other than that he was a pretty darn good sprinter?
He's tactical, put himself into the race, but never made it, didn't have to be on the lead. The one thing that stands out for him is some of the horses that he beat, right? Beating Mind Your Biscuits, Dre Fong, Whitmore. Whitmore eventually goes on to win a Breeders' Cup Sprint in his own right. And then there's that guy, Peter Miller, again, that shows up in back-to-back mentions on this podcast.
Number 21, Conduit. My personal memory of this one, back in this day, JK, 2008, 2009, I used to get this funny assignment for Horse Player magazine where long before pre-entries, right around now, or maybe even before now, I would have to do a write-up of the Breeders' Cup Turf. So Conduit very much was on my radar from that St. Ledger win back in 2008. Parlayed that into a turf, backed it up the next year. This isn't before your time. You probably have some memory of this Irish runner.
Yeah, not too far out. This is one of the first ones I can kind of remember, like, oh, their horses are better than ours on the grass.
Let's talk about a horse for course, one of the ultimate horses for courses. Santa Anita has hosted the Breeders' Cup more than any other venue. Most of the Santa Anita runnings, the Sprint has been on the downhill. Mizdirection, am I correct in saying maybe the greatest Santa Anita downhill horse for course runner of all time?
She was outstanding. I mean, she loved the downhill probably more than me, which is hard to do. The one thing that stands out about her, obviously, is the celebrity that came along with her and the connection with Jim Rome, who famously used to kind of use horse racing as a punchline, but was so eloquent in falling in love with the game and speaking about the game after Mizdirection, the experience that she gave him.
Let's go to number 19 on the list, Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Goldencents won it back-to-back in 2013 and 2014 for the Rafi Bejarano Doug O'Neill team.
Goldencents taught me a lesson, and he's one of the first horses that taught me that speed is a weapon. The faster, the better. He was better when he went faster on the lead, not out there trying to walk the dog. He was brilliant in speed, and he's done well enough as a stallion.
We got to go to one of the most infamous moments in Breeders' Cup history when we talk about this next one. Number 18, Modern Games, won the 2021 Juvenile Turf, but you didn't get paid if you bet on him. Subject for another video. Anyway, he came back the next year and got it done in the 2022 Breeders' Cup Mile. Charlie Appleby and William Buick, no strangers to success at the Breeders' Cup.
Just glad he got to run. We got to see him win that day, and it could have been tough to not be able to see him run in that spot. He was outstanding then, and it's pretty interesting, an interesting type too. The juvenile to older horse combo doesn't happen as much as you would think it would.
No, but it did actually happen with this next horse as well, a runner who might even be in the conversation on his best days as one of the, I was almost going to say you could call him the greatest American turf sprinter. Maybe he was too in and out for that. I don't know. You tell me. Golden Pal won that 2020 Juvenile Turf, backed it up with the Turf Sprint in 2021. I think he's got to be on the short list for best American turf sprinters.
I would think so. I remember I made a wager on him when he went to Royal Ascot for the final time because thinking that he was one of the best we've ever had and we're better at turf sprinting than them. Why wouldn't he win? Well, Irad wasn't paying attention when they broke from the gate. But Golden Pal was outstanding as a 2-year-old when he broke from the 14. He was a reminder to me that in turf sprints, drawing the far outside is a good place to be. He was sensational. And on his best, visually, one of the most fun horses to watch. He did it so easily.
The 2023 Breeders' Cup was a big one for back-to-back runners, and I think you might have even had it in one of our bold predictions videos or early predictions videos here on YouTube. You predicted there were going to be 3 back-to-back winners. One of them was Goodnight Olive, won that filly and mare sprint in 2022 and 2023. Just a really cool horse, Goodnight Olive. Always tried hard and was a personal favorite of mine as well.
Yeah, huge fan. She made me look smart when I said there'd be a couple of back-to-back winners, her and the next one we'll talk about, number 15. But I will say this, too. The interesting about Goodnight Olive is that she won back-to-back, but she could be the first 2 legs of Chad Brown winning 3 in a row, where I think Ways and Means could be tough to beat this year.
We're going to be talking a lot about Ways and Means on other videos. Make sure you subscribe to the Breeders' Cup YouTube channel and back that up with a subscription to the In the Money Media YouTube channel, because there's going to be a ton of exclusive content, not just from us at the In the Money Media team, but from the whole Breeders' Cup content team as well. You're not going to want to miss any of it if you want to be fully prepared. You tipped your hand on this one, JK, or tipped our hand, I should say. 15 Elite Power winning the 2022 and 2023 sprints. The Bill Mott, Irad Ortiz Jr. tandem with this one, and I could just still see this one making big runs down the center, getting the job done in this prestigious race.
Elite Power was a sensational sprinter, and the thing I loved about him was he was one of those horses that came from out of it that you would think might love a 7-furlong sprint, but he was devastating going 6 furlongs. He taught me some valuable lessons about late running sprinters.
Number 14 on the list, Groupie Doll for a trainer, Buff Bradley, who we've talked about endlessly in the history of the In the Money Players podcast, usually regarding Divisadero, but also some with this runner, won the 2012 and 2013 filly and mare sprints.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Buff Bradley hasn't had a lot of Breeders' Cup starters, only 2, and he's won both times with Groupie Doll. I've got to get to know and work with her regular rider, Rajiv Mirage, and Rajiv, when you talk about Groupie Doll, his smile goes from ear to ear.
Number 13, Midnight Loot, keeping it with the sprinters. This one won the 2007-2008 sprint. One thing I remember about this horse, and it's borne out in his progeny, is he was bred to go longer than sprint distances, but because of some issue with his wind, just could really get his maximum performance at the sprint distance. He showed that in both these Breeders' Cup wins.
Yeah, and one thing that I also think is pretty impressive about Midnight Loot is he won in back-to-back years, but he did it on different surfaces, right? He won on dirt and on synthetic. I think that says a lot for this day and age where we see a little bit more synthetic racing, and we'll see a little bit more in New York. To see a horse like this be able to win at that level on 2 different surfaces.
One of my favorite Breeders' Cup memories, and this one will go back to before your time, JK, but 2023, the Man O Mandela Day, Johar dead heated with this horse, High Chaparral, who'd also won the race the year before. Aidan O'Brien, of course, had so much success at the Breeders' Cup over the years, and High Chaparral, a big part of that with his back-to-back Breeders' Cup turf wins.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said he's won so many races, Aidan O'Brien, in the Breeders' Cup. Obviously, the Classic is elusive, and we'll get to that in a little while. But I think it's interesting to note that this is the only horse he won twice with. He's had a lot of really good ones, but none that could duplicate that effort. It's a very difficult thing to do, to be at the top of your game in back-to-back years.
One fun note from Eric DeCoster, who helped us out with this video. High Chaparral, the first Epsom Derby winner to win a Breeders' Cup race, then Auguste Rodin becoming the second last year. Will City of Troy become a third this year? Well, that's the topic for another video. And again, the reason we want you to subscribe to both the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media YouTube channels. Number 11 on the list, just outside the top 10, we put Nix Go, a runner who won 2 different Breeders' Cup races. The Dirt Mile, a race that, is a Breeders' Cup race, one of the newer ones. There's no such thing as a non-prestigious Breeders' Cup race, but certainly not as prestigious as the one he won the following year, 2021, Nix Go winning that Breeders' Cup Classic. This is a horse I know you remember and remember well.
Yeah, I got three thoughts about Nick's Go. The first one is Goldencents taught me a lesson about speed that I used with Nick's Go. He was one of those horses that the faster the better on the front end. Like you mentioned, Pete, 2021 was the pay leg of a double that I hit that got me second in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. So Nick's Go near and dear to my heart. But also the really cool thing about Nick's Go is, let's not forget, in his juvenile year, he was second in the juvenile to game winner, right? He almost won 3 Breeders' Cup races in a row.
Number 10 on the list, Royal Delta, great race mare. She won the distaff back in 2011 and 2012. I remember her from her debut race being one that always looked like a Breeders' Cup winner. She made it happen. Another one who tried to get 3 Breeders' Cup wins in a row. That part didn't quite work out, but Royal Delta was awesome and definitely deserves a spot in this top 10.
Yeah, she was outstanding, and I loved her versatility, right? She could do it out on the front end. She could come from off of it. I remember Mike Smith on her back a few times, and she was just one of those, kind of one of the first powerful, dominant mares that I can remember in the kind of modern day of racing.
One of the great turf milers of all time, annexed the 92 and 93 mile. Lure was the name of this one for the Shug McGahee, Mike Smith team. Great to see them still going strong a few decades after Lure's success. There's some old timers who are going to be really mad that Lure isn't higher on this list.
Well, you know me, I love a horse that can find the front end, and Lure was that type. He did it on the grass as well. Such a weapon in these grass races to have the speed, especially the speed and the ability to finish like Lure did.
Miesk will put at number 8, 87 and 88 mile. She's had an effect on the breed with progeny and horses closely related to her doing very well subsequently. But one cool thing about Miesk, the first ever repeat Breeders' Cup winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's interesting to note that Freddie Head was her rider, and he hadn't had enough of those back-to-back wins with her. He had to do something even specialer later as a trainer, which we'll get to. Miesk, that run up the rail was sensational back in 87, and a really cool turf miler.
We'll keep it with my era, JK, the 80s. Bayakoa at number 7, next on the list, winning the 89 and 90 distaff for Lafitte Pincay Jr. and Ron McAnally, stalwarts on the California scene and the Breeders' Cup in those days.
D. Wayne did everything he could to stop her. He had a bunch of horses in there to try to set it up for others, and it just didn't work. She was just that good. And, one of the kind of first that I can remember looking back and seeing her name even before I was fully involved in racing.
To borrow a phrase from the legendary race caller Trevor Denman of Del Mar, the more they asked, the more she gave. Number 6 on the list, another one I can already see in the comments, people saying, how could this one not be higher? How could this one not be higher? By the way, feel free to do that. Let us know in the comments what you think we got right and wrong on this list, and go ahead and give us your top 3. We won't ask you to rank them all, but maybe give us your top 3 back-to-back Breeders' Cup winners. Number 6 is Goldacova, 2008, 2009, 2010. She won the mile for Freddie Head. What a fantastic filly and mare this one was. Couldn't quite get the 4-peat done, but hey, the 3-peat's still pretty impressive.
Winning 3 in a row is in anything. Winning your maiden, an allowance, and a grade 3 in a row is outstanding. To win this race over a 3-year span, 3 years in a row, and to do it where she kind of, it's a turf mile. Random things can happen in terms of trip and all of that. She did it, and she just worked out great trips every time. She was sensational, and I might be one of those people that thinks she might have been able to be a little bit higher on this list.
Yeah, she's so near and dear to me. My first ever day at Royal Ascot, Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK, and I, along with our wives, got there just in time to get up to the rail and watch her win the Queen Anne. Really huge Goldacova fan, the versatility, the talent. But here's the problem. If you want her to be higher on the list, you got to bump out one of these top 5, and I'm not sure which one you want to do that with, starting with number 5, Beholder, winner of the 2012 Juvenile Fillies, the 2013 Distaff. I know you have a lot of great Beholder memories.
Absolutely. Then she came back and won the 2016 Distaff as well, beating Songbird, which we were talking about at another show, hoping that Torpedo Anna and Idiomatic can hook up in a similar way. I will say this about Beholder, too. The shame is we didn't get to see her run in the Classic in 2015. Most will remember she was supposed to run in that Classic against American Pharoah and wasn't able to do so. I think that would have been an outstanding situation, but she was sensational. One of those horses was able to win a juvenile race and then to carry that on later into her career. One of the greatest race mares to ever step foot on the racetrack in this country.
A match for the ages that we didn't get to see. A couple more of those as the list goes on, at least one that I can think of. Number 4, Wise Dan, one of the best American milers of all time, won the mile in 2012 and 2013 under a couple of different riders, Johnny V and Jose Lescano. Charlie Lopresti was calling the shots for this one.
Yeah, unfortunately, Johnny was injured for that second one, so Jose picked up the mount on Wise Dan, and what a nice pickup mount that had to be for him. Wise Dan was one of those horses that was just so consistent, and I think that's what we appreciated about him. We got to see him run for such a long time. He had run well into his years. He was such a cool horse, and I think something about the fact that he was a gelding just kind of made you warm to him just a little bit more.
Number 3 on the list is here. I'm going to just go ahead and say it. More for the narrative than necessarily just the performance on the track, but the narrative is so great, I can't quibble too much with the placement of Codys Wish, winner of the 2022 and 2023 Dirt Miles. Of course, just an unforgettable story with his connection to Cody Dorman and the inspiring coverage of that. I'm okay with this one being there based on the narrative, even though, again, Dirt Mile, maybe not quite the level of some of these other races we've been talking about. But hey, let's not get lost in the fact that he was a heck of a racehorse too. There's a reason I have his Briar sitting next to me here in the Brooklyn bunker. Codys Wish checking in at number 3 on the list. You okay with this placement?
That's fine. He's a great racehorse, and like you said, there's an emotional tie to this story with Cody Dorman and this Breeders' Cup. This is the last Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile coming in the last week of Cody's life. The story, there's not too many that can grab at the heartstrings any harder than this Codys Wish.
Number 2, Tis Now. I was there for his second win back in the 2001 Classic. Maybe the first double winner that I saw in person. Just a terrific training job by Jay Robbins. And really the thing I remember most, and hopefully we can play the actual clip with audio here for you, that run down the stretch in 2001 in front of a wounded crowd of New Yorkers just weeks after the events of 9/11. Amazing to see what Tis Now did.
Yeah, it was sensational, and to get that win in 2001, back-to-back wins against really talented Irish horses, and just the narrative of how it led up to with the events of September 11th and the words that came out of Tom Durkin's mouth that I won't even try to repeat. I'll just let him do it.
And Tis Now is battling on the American Horse of the Year, and the Arc winner are heads apart with the Farron Niggle in the Classic. On the outside, Saki. Tis Now fights on. Here's the winner, desperately close. Tis Now wins it for America.
Number 1 on the list. This one I think you agree with, given the tattoo you have on your body. The 2008 Distaff, the 2009 Classic. Who are we talking about? Y'all know by now. Another Briar back here, but too far away for me to grab and show this one. We speak, of course, of Zenyatta.
Yeah, I mean, her 2008 Breeders' Cup Distaff was just a cool race. But what she did in the Classic, taking on the boys, looking beat basically the entire race, and then to get that unbelievable call, I won't copy him exactly, from Trevor Denman on what she did, what she meant, and the way that she did it, the excitement that she brought, the disappointment that she brought in 2010 when she wasn't able to run by Blame, unless obviously you bet on Blame. Zenyatta, I've got no problem with her being number 1 on this list. Like you said, Pete, she's tattooed on my arm.
I bet on Blame and was still disappointed, but I thought it was one of those fascinating things that sometimes happens in sport, JK, where a horse actually gains in my mind in defeat. So game was the effort, so much was the deck stacked against her that night at Churchill Downs. There you have it. All of the back-to-back Breeders' Cup winners ranked. PTF and JK thanking you, encouraging you once again to sign up for notifications and subscribe to both the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media YouTube channels. Great coverage, and it's going to be a lot of it coming down the pike. We'll see you soon.